Hi friends, welcome to the NPTEL course Strategy and Technology, a practical primer. We are in week 12 with the theme of Technology and Strategy case studies. In this lecture, the 60th in the series, we discuss the cases of Fitbit and Apple. Apple has been a global leader in consumer electronics, focusing on a range of computers and smart devices. Apple is a company that is driven by innovation. Fitbit has been an early mover into fitness and health tracking, but has faced the challenges of a startup. Apple's history of innovative products and Steve Jobs' passion for innovation need no introduction. Steve Jobs' innovation was in terms of not only creating a perfect smart product, but also creating a consumer experience with a total ecosystem. At another level, Fitbit pioneered the health tracking operation that probably stimulated Apple's ambitious innovation in smartwatches. Fitbit certainly had some technological advantage in health tracking, but never set for itself high aspirations of pushing the envelope. This lecture focuses on the contrasting cases of Apple and Fitbit. Apple gained immensely with technology and strategy powering each other, while Fitbit led the innovation and strategy engines to be on low drive. Let's first discuss Fitbit and then proceed to Apple. Fitbit is in the consumer electronics industry. It was founded in 2007. It has reported a revenue of $1.42 billion and a loss of $190 million. Its market capitalization is just above its revenue level. Its products are trackers, smartwatches, smart scales, and wireless headphones. This is the timeline of Fitbit. It has started its journey with a few thousands of fitness trackers getting sold and adding to its products from time to time. Between 2007 and 2015, its journey has been that of a normal startup, going through different levels of funding, bringing out products, and reaching a good valuation. By 2015, its valuation reached $3.4 billion. Between 2016 and 2021, it did some acquisitions. It unveiled a smartwatch, which was the lightest metal smartwatch, and also became the fifth largest wearable technology company in shipments. By 2019, the company sold more than 120 million devices for 29 million users being on the user list. 2020, it introduced the Fitbit Flow, a low-cost emergency ventilator to help address urgent global needs during COVID-19 pandemic. But during this period, its performance has also been declining, with several Chinese smartwatch makers coming into the digital watch area, and also Apple maintaining a lead position in the digital watch area. In 2021, the company was acquired by Google. The global shipments of hearables, watches, wristbands, and other wearables stood at 445 million units approximately. The overall wearables market is forecast to generate more than $73 billion in revenues in 2022 and maintain a steady growth thereafter. Since 2010, when it started offering its fitness tracker, Fitbit sold more than 76 million devices worldwide. Its revenues did increase. However, the share of wearable device shipments has registered a decrease over time, and Fitbit tried to maintain its operating expenditure for R&D, but the innovation level is simply not adequate to the current aggressive moves by Apple and other competitors. Fitbit could be seen as a case of being a winner to becoming a loser. While the rise of wearable technology began in 1975, Fitbit took it entirely to a new level in 2008. The company's vision to combine the technological savvy nature of the millennials and the emerging health-conscious trend became a big hit. Fitbit could become a leader in fitness trackers and go in for an IPO within 7 years of launching, raising $358 million in the IPO. In 2015, the company owned 35% of the entire wearable device market share. Despite the great start, Fitbit lost the game of competition as it did not have a strong competitive advantage. Its fitness trackers could be easily emulated and even improved upon. the company's value dropped by 90% in just 2.5 years. Fitbit faced direct competition from Jabon, Apple and Xiaomi, as it was able to patent only its tracking technology and not the entire idea. All smartphones, as we are aware, now have tracking features, which was enough to dilute the market share of Fitbit. And Apple smartwatches began hurting Fitbit way beyond that. This is a graph showing the market share of wearables by vendor between 2014 and 2020. There was a time when Fitbit had 38% market share and all the others were in different slices. However, by 2020, you can see that the fitness market has undergone big structural transformation. What you can see is Apple taking the lead with 34.1% market share and Xiaomi taking the next higher market share, followed by Huawei at 9.8%. Even the mighty Samsung is just at 9% and Fitbit shrank to 2.9%. It has been a fall which was very unique in terms of an innovator falling to that low level of market share. Fitbit has not been, of course, keeping very quiet. It has also been trying to make a comeback. To gain wider adoption and sustain the user engagement with devices, Fitbit has decided to change its direction in a significant way. Fitbit understood that its real potential is to become a digital health platform that improves people's health and integrates into the healthcare ecosystem. Fitbit wants to not only be a hardware supplier, but also be able to integrate with healthcare providers, giving personalized coaching and even decrease the insurance premium. So, from hardware, it is moving into software-backed a health ecosystem. But the transition may not be easy for Fitbit. It has many challenges to face. As a platform, Fitbit will aggregate, analyze, and enable action. In its current state as a wearable company, network effects are weak. User data is not widely shared. While we can share the data with friends who also have Fitbit, the information loop does not go further very much. Investing heavily in R&D, Fitbit will have to move beyond the data metrics realm and improve not only its API, but figure out how to drive behavior change and create its own platform on which healthcare companies can obtain data and analytics. So it has to be in the mass market. Apple and Samsung are already in the digital health market in a big way. Fitbit faces tough competition from them as well, because they are integrating not only their health applications but also their digital watches. Fitbit will have to gain the trust of the users, as they might want only to post data to the platform they trust. Multi-homing also will be unlikely because healthcare data is highly private. So these are the challenges as the company wants to move from hardware-based growth to software or the healthcare analytics-based growth. There are a few ways in which Fitbit may try to overcome the challenges. In 2017, Fitbit started focusing on technology that could provide exceptional medical features in the tracking devices. It started launching smartwatches rather than just keep with itself with the fitness bands. Those smartwatches started to look like Apple watches and Samsung watches, but of course in terms of the detailed parameters and the manufacturing capabilities, Fitbit wasn't up to the mark. Fitbit also is catering to certain metabolic diseases and certain chronic diseases. Fitbit now caters to hospitals, patients and health insurance by addressing the following 4 major disease conditions: sleep disorders including apnea, diabetes, cardiovascular health and mental health. Fitbit is trying to choose a niche market. The audience now has more than 50 million registered users, which makes the company come back as a strong player in the industry. It started paying greater attention to healthcare and fitness needs and trends and started catering to them. It is able to cater to a particular market segment within the industry and is trying to create an optimal product for that niche. Fitbit has given up on trying to match Apple's growing list of features and instead it's focusing on creating medical technology that competes with Apple and Samsung. Loyal community is the underlying theme of Fitbit's marketing strategy, and a specific type of audience which allows the brand to narrow its focus. From being potentially a mass market company, Fitbit has now chosen to go on a focus or niche strategy. Hopefully that will help Fitbit to gain from a market segment where the biggies of the digital watch industry may not focus. Compared to other health bands or fitness trackers, Fitbit does have 7 competitive advantages. 1. Broad range of connected health and fitness devices, from the simple basic fitness band to the more Apple-like digital smartwatch. Advanced purpose-built hardware and software technologies. Direct relationship and continuous communication with users. Large and growing community and powerful network effects. Broad mobile compatibility and open API. Broad and differentiated go-to-market strategy. Leading market position and global brand. These are the 7 competitive advantages which Fitbit may claim over other similar fitness trackers and health companions. But these are not very specific competitive advantages over Apple, certainly. You can see the Fitbit Inc.'s revenue profile. It reached its peak in 2016 and thereafter it has been a steady decline. We have to wait and watch whether the acquisition by Google of Fitbit would lead to greater synergy between the giant and the startup that could not completely fulfill its mission. These are the keynotes related to Fitbit. Now let's look at a case study of Apple. Apple is in the industry of computer hardware, computer software, consumer electronics and much more. Its products are very well known, need no introduction. iPod, iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, HomePod, software and services. I haven't mentioned various other innovations including the Apple Car, which are under various stages of development. It was founded on 1st April 1976 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak and Ronald Wayne. Headquartered in California, it has a revenue of $366 billion and a net income of $95 billion. Public limited company with an employee count of 147,000 and with plants, most of them are contract manufacturing plants all over the world. Its market capitalization was $2.46 trillion a few months ago, but it has crossed $3 trillion lately. In terms of the timeline, it is very interesting. Between 1976 and 1990 has been one phase of growth, but those were foundational products too. It created the Apple III computer in May 1980, and that was the time also when Apple went public. It also launched certain integrated software architecture. Macintosh was another game changer for Apple, introduced in 1984, and in 1987 it became the first color Mac. It also introduced laptop which was portable, Macintosh 1989 laptop. Between 1991 and 2010, Apple had a tumultuous ride. Steve Jobs left in 1985 but returned in 1997 to create the 5-year technology alliance with Microsoft. But even that didn't go well. But from 2000 onwards, Apple moved the roller coaster to a more stable and secularly upward trajectory. He introduced iTunes, OS X and iPod, one of the company's biggest accomplishments, and even to date, that architecture of technology and that architecture of strategy continues to power Apple's growth. In 1991, it introduced the digital media player, which didn't work out well at all. So between 1991 till Steve Jobs returned, there was a roller coaster. But from 2006, it started coming into the game big time. In 2006, the company introduced 2 new computers with Intel processors, the iMac and MacBook Pro. In 2007, it introduced the smartphone and iPhone to the world, and it changed the company's name to just Apple Inc. The MacBook Air, the thinnest laptop, was introduced in 2008, and the iPad tablet was introduced in 2010. So starting with a roller coaster that happened between 1991 and 1997, the return of Steve Jobs in 1997 saw the steadying of the ship and continued growth momentum, that too based on game-changing technologies of iPod, iPhone and iPad. And alongside, the Macintosh range was upgraded and made sleeker and more powerful. Between 2011 and 2021, Apple continued to make history and kept on registering new peaks in terms of technological development as well as revenues. In 2011, Siri was introduced. It was the first AI voice assistant. Unfortunately, the same year, Steve Jobs dies at 56 after battling a long illness. Tim Cook, who was the head of supply chain and marketing, takes over. Between 2013 and 14, Apple continued its growth run. It sold its 500 millionth iPhone. In 2015, it started taking the pre-orders for Apple Watch. After a hesitant start, even Apple Watch became a world leader. Then in 2016, it unveiled iPhone SE, and in 2018, it surpassed the 1 trillion value in terms of market capitalization. In 2019, Apple TV Plus, a subscription streaming service, was launched, and in 2021, it crossed a record of $365 billion revenue and crossed $3 trillion. That is towards the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. Now, Apple's case study is not just one of technology. It is not just one of strategy. It is a case study of leadership. It is a case study of leadership powering cost-effective operations, powering future-ready technology or even future-making technology, and a strategy that makes the company distinctive, differentiated, and at the same time universally liked. So we need to study Apple not merely in terms of technology and strategy, but also in terms of leadership. I would say that Steve Jobs represented the life and soul of technology. He was an iconic leader of technology and business. Apple products have achieved a cult status, and Apple has become the first company in the world to cross USD 3 trillion in market value. The legacy of Steve's technological genius and business leadership has been taken forward well by Tim Cook and the Apple team. And that was possible because the foundations were unassailable and the drivers for growth were impeccable in terms of their architecture and the positioning. Steve Jobs was one of the greatest technology visionaries and business leaders of all time. He defined what words like creativity, innovation, and connectivity mean through his products and customer experiences. He was a rare leader because he gave depth and substance to the concepts that were just abstractly talked about in books. They were never fully and truly experienced by the users, but Steve Jobs was the leader who gave great depth and substance to various concepts, which we will discuss as we go forward. He made several unique and pioneering contributions. Over the 2 decades of stewardship, Steve pioneered a computing and connectivity revolution. It changed irrevocably how the world networks and experiences itself. In a manner of speaking, he transformed consumer electronics. His iMac, all-in-one, iPods, iPhones, iPads, Apple Watch, Apple TV are all game changers in the respective markets. Each of his devices was an epitome of elegance and aesthetics, but with high performance, reliability and durability as well. Each device brought in a level of consumer experience that was never before experienced at that point of time in respect of each product introduction. Steve's genius also lay in the fact that his products had a universal appeal, from highly developed markets to low-income markets, and from affluent consumers to indigent consumers. Segmentation, as defined for decades by marketing gurus, had no relevance for Apple products and customers. iPhone, for example, has a universal appeal. It is a universally liked, universally bought, and universally used product. There are 3 aspects of iPhone which we need to look at. we have on the right side Steve Jobs launching the first iPhone. The original iPhone was introduced by him on January 9, 2007 at the Macworld Conference and Expo held in San Francisco, California. In his address, Jobs said, "This is a day that I have been looking forward to for 2.5 years," adding that today Apple is going to reinvent the phone, and how true he was. He also brought in the concept of convergence. He introduced the iPhone as a combination of 3 devices: widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communicator. And he introduced it at a price of $199, which was very attractive for a phone of that nature at that point of time. He transformed the way how digital technology could be integrated to improve and enhance everybody's everyday living. There was a level of artistic genius that cannot be emulated by anyone else in Steve Jobs. What was remarkable is that even as a technologist and businessman, Steve Jobs is compared with some of the greatest artists of all time, such as Mozart, Picasso, and Leonardo da Vinci, because Steve Jobs was an artist and a genius extraordinary who integrated many aspects of product design, delivery, and usage in a very artful way and in an artistic manner. Let's look at what that integration meant. First, technology was fused with art, as much as hardware and software were integrated with each other. He also evoked simultaneously emotion with materialism, and he made his devices very useful and an integral part of business and life. We could see Steve Jobs as an amazing inventor of product concepts, an astounding integrator of ecosystems, and an awesome creator of customer experiences. Let's look at this. He was an amazing inventor of product concepts. He was an amazing integrator of ecosystems. He was an amazing creator of customer experiences. Therefore, his ability to influence has been all across the customer value chain, not merely the industrial value chain. As we go through this lecture, we will continue to draw further insights from his leadership as to how thinking differently can make highly positive and significantly transformative changes to individuals, companies, societies, and nations. I would say that he has moved software or computers, the fields of connectivity, from digital divide to digital connectivity. The greatest contribution of Steve Jobs was in making computers and smart devices a part of daily living, at work and off work. This was a key driver of all his work. We can see both Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak working together on their first product. He co-founded Apple with Steve Wozniak in 1976, invented the world's first truly personal computer in 1977, kept on transforming the computing and connectivity world with stunning new products. He bridged the device divide. Until the 1980s, computers were for offices and businesses, while entertainment devices were for homes and families. Steve made computers truly and sensitively personal devices, capable of handling arts, graphics, media, and entertainment, along with the original business intention. Apple brought out new devices that set new standards in elegance and performance. He pioneered the integration of media in all forms with handheld portable Apple devices such as iPods, iPhones, and iPads. He transformed the digital divide, therefore, into digital connectivity. Productivity comes out of efficient organization of activities, and motivation results from the sensory satisfaction. Apple's products achieve both of these things. They make life both productive and pleasurable. There is a level of socialism in his device design and execution. There has been a socialistic philosophy, whether Steve Jobs expressed it that way or not. Probably that has not been understood well. He believed in device universality and commonness of aspirations across segments. Before Steve Jobs' wisdom, and actually even after Steve Jobs, this has not been really replicated with Elon by anyone else. Before Steve Jobs started coming on the scene with his range of products, every other industry or business corporation believed in offering products at a lower level, so-called utilitarian or functional products, to one stratum of the society. and products at a higher level, so-called luxury products, to another stratum. Steve's paradigm was entirely different. In total contrast to such a practice, Steve offered one standardized, high-technology, high-value product to all sections of the society. Therefore, there was universality in his product. He did not believe in the practice of either skimming the market with hyped-up value in respect of the so-called luxury products, or usurious pricing or fragmenting it with broken technologies and flexible pricing. He developed one universal product which appealed to everybody. His products are the same, whether for billionaires or for commoners. In the first several years of iPod, iPhone and iPad revolution, he offered only one standardized model for all customer segments. The user experience from his products was so classy, yet so natural and personalized, that neither the rich nor the not so rich found themselves alienated from his universal designs. He adopted minimalist design with maximal impact. He created a universal appeal based on technological virtuosity. He made connectivity a transformational phenomenon of social equalization and universal harmonization. If only more corporate leaders become attuned to this philosophy of providing high product value and exceptional consumer experience, industry would be much more scale efficient, much more waste avoiding, and much more cost competitive. This is the success factor of Steve Jobs. He also defined what it means to make a blockbuster product. I have created a graphic to present how Steve Jobs designed and developed Apple products, not only as epitomes of technological advancement, but also as elegant works of art. Very few manufacturers can match Apple on scoring 10 out of 10 on factors of blockbuster product design, development, manufacture, and delivery. It starts with a creative and elegant design, and it provides functionalization beyond imagination. He always thought of customers' requirements, which customers themselves did not know, and provided them. Flawless performance, unmatched quality, both in terms of the style and substance of the product. Quality was top class. Exceptional price value advantage. Price could be higher than, let's say, a Samsung watch or a Samsung phone, but it always provided exceptional price value relationship. Reliable service assurance. Panache for perfection from product to packaging to delivery. And most importantly, effective customer connectivity. The biggest contribution of Steve Jobs has been in terms of redefining products in terms of customer experience. Connect with customers has been taken to a new level by staying ahead of customer expectations consistently. And these are the factors that would drive creation of a blockbuster product. With Steve Jobs' demise, it fell on his successor Tim Cook to carry forward the legacy. He was already a part of Steve Jobs' leadership team as head of supply chain from 1998 and as chief operating officer from 2007. He became the chief executive officer in 2011 upon the demise of Steve Jobs and carried forward the legacy with aplomb. See, the selection of the right man ahead of the requirement and having him move up the ladder in appropriate steps was a leadership succession genius of Steve Jobs. Not only that, he provided the platforms which could enable Tim Cook to not only take forward the legacy but also enhance it with time changing. The other aspect is that Tim Cook also understood what made Apple the great corporation that it was and made only those changes that are required to make it even greater. So if Steve Jobs was the epitome of innovation and perfection, Tim Cook carried forward the legacy by bringing in more perfection and more innovation. There may have been some order change in terms of what was the key driver between perfection and innovation, but certainly Tim Cook continued to make the continuity have great impact on Apple's future while making subtle changes that added to the strength and the drive of Apple. At times, change becomes inevitable in companies' tracks due to the internal or external developments. Changing for the better while continuing with what clearly is the best propels a firm to greater successes. Jobs created such a lasting foundation for Apple. Tim Cook developed and built on the change with continuity paradigm admirably. I would always believe that change with continuity is one of the biggest leadership advice one can have. Ratan Tata did that admirably well when he took over the mantle from the iconic J.R.D. Tata. He moved the Tata Group into the modern times, but he did it by keeping the continuity of Tata tradition, Tata business foundations, and making the changes that are required in terms of a globalizing and globalizable world. And Tim Cook is another great demonstration at a global level. There were certain leadership characteristics that were integrated, institutionalized in Apple. Some of the leadership characteristics I would touch upon now. First, deep expertise, both within the individuals and the teams. Second, immersion in the details across the value chain. Third, collaborative intra and interfunctional debates. This is a process paradigm, a competency paradigm which every company must have to be an excelling company in its domain. These three leadership qualities are expected out of every Apple manager, from entry level to senior vice president. When managers possess these qualities, decisions are made in a coordinated fashion by the people who are most qualified to make them. The second one, deep expertise. Apple is a company where experts lead experts. One great example is Apple's more than 600 camera hardware technology experts working in a group led by another expert leader. This is because iPads, iPhones, laptops and desktops all feature camera, and these experts would be scattered across product lines if Apple were organized in business unit fashion. That would have diluted the technological and business expertise and would have also reduced their power to solve problems and generate and refine innovations. On the other hand, in Apple, all these are centralized, all these are integrated, and they are offered those facilities in terms of the divisional end results. The third one is the willingness to collaboratively debate. At Apple, cross-functional collaborative debate is crucial to achieve innovation. In 2009, Hubel, one of the managers, had an idea of developing an iPhone feature that would allow people to take portrait photos with bokeh, a Japanese term that refers to blurring of the background in a pleasing manner. At that time, only single-lens reflex cameras could take such photos, which was very expensive. He had an idea that dual-lens design and advanced computational photography techniques could achieve the same result as single-reflex cameras. Even though the idea was well received, the team faced many problems. After months of engineering effort, a key stakeholder, the video engineering team, which is responsible for the low-level software that controls sensor and camera operations, found a way, and the collaboration paid off. Portrait mode becoming central to Apple's marketing, not only of the iPhone 7 Plus, but several other aspects. And also, it started influencing how software can take camera functionality much higher level. One of the contributions of Steve Jobs, which will stay forever, is the concept of design language. He has done what was for long impossible. He infused life into technology. He rendered its functioning soulful and made technology intelligible to even the uninitiated. So we can call Steve Jobs' technologies as humanized technologies. Mac graphics, computer mouse, touch slide pinch move, sensory commands, voice commands, they all brought the device to a person using it close and made the device a part of his human intelligence. Apple's design philosophy set by Steve Jobs has been so strong that succeeding leadership generation has only to build on the design strengths, marking change with continuity. This design language has been commercially successful as well. We can see the early growth of Apple products. Between July 7 and July 2008, we had the iPhone launched. Then came iPhone 3G, then iPhone 3GS, iPhone 4 and iPhone 4S. You can see the exponential pace of growth of Apple products. And that was all based on very simple minimalistic design, but packing the best of integration in hardware and software. If more scientific and technology leaders pursue simplicity and focus for optimal performance, the design to delivery value chain would be that much more impactful for the corporations as well as all of their stakeholders. We have to create an ecosystem for a firm to be effective. Digital ecosystem is something which Steve Jobs created, and it is something to be emulated by any other company who wants to create a total customer experience. One of the fundamental contributions of Steve Jobs has been the creation of a global ecosystem that connected all the stakeholders of the firm's value chain, functional, business value chain, and customer value chain seamlessly. What we had earlier was make or buy, and that has been moved to network partnership, and it cruised through the OEM component system and outsourcing through globally networked partnerships. Apple's global ecosystem is sufficiently independent to be specialized and yet strongly connected to the Apple ecosystem. A make or buy procurement decision is now a network partnership on a global scale. From having only a few competencies being looked at, this new paradigm has the collaborative competencies providing synergy and impact. The wave of outsourcing is not only that of cost competitiveness and time effectiveness. Bringing every concept, including participation with shared objectives and own passion, is required for a network to be extremely effective on a global basis. No leader has encompassed all these concepts under one umbrella of creating a virtual ecosystem by which all the current stakeholders and future value drivers would combine and add value. The ability to conceptualize and establish a global ecosystem connecting all the value chains, all the geographies, and all the stakeholders seamlessly is a unique leadership capability that Steve Jobs possessed. Let's look at the design language further. He has done what was for long impossible. As I said, infused life into technology, made the functioning soulful, and made technology intelligible to even the uninitiated. Sony had this objective of content first. It realized the importance of media and entertainment to development of electronics much earlier than Apple. That's why Sony made those adventurous, as some people think, but very necessary investments in content creation or content companies, including movie companies, far ahead of anybody else. But Apple believed in the concept-based approach. But it was Steve Jobs who pioneered the integration of music and movies into the Apple ecosystem through his iPod 2001 and iTunes 2003, providing a seamless media connectivity to the user. So from content first of Sony to concept best of Apple, we can see the two parts of the content spectrum working for the advantage of the consumers. The last lap or the delivery to the customers is the one which saw Apple taking a pole position in the media area. Some people do view Apple's approach as an attempt to regulate consumer freedom through proprietary digital platform. But eventually his contribution to making unlimited choice available to the consumer and curbing media piracy needs to be well acknowledged. He also supported media corporations during this process. Another important aspect of Steve Jobs' contribution is the application development area. Developing apps has come about in a big way because of the Apple ecosystem. He made unprecedented contribution to app development for his devices. The true era of application development, I would say, has arrived with only the iDevices, more particularly iPhone and iPad of Apple. Application development is the model of virtual integration at its best. It provides unlimited computing, connecting, reading, gaming, and entertainment capability to the Apple devices through third-party applications in a way of competencies from all over the world integrating into the device. Apple could secure over 500,000 applications for its iPhone in the very first few years. That speaks of the success of the Apple digital ecosystem, wherein any creative and capable software developer could come up with front-ranking applications. And Steve Jobs made sure that Apple as a company had a continuous dialogue with the app developers. Some of these application developers eventually moved into a state where they could by themselves become medium and mega enterprises. Angry Birds, for example. Also at a time When manufacturers considered retailing to be a different expertise, Steve Jobs propounded the concept of Apple stores to provide the customers with the experience of checking out and owning an Apple device, and that enhanced integrated user experience, and it remained as one of the most important factors of Apple product launches. Let us look at the digital ecosystem, because digital ecosystem has been the core driver for Apple with years of development. Is it retailing or customer experiencing? What he did was that he looked at retail stores as something which is representative of the connect between the consumer and the company. Within 3 years, with 320 retail stores, 237 of which are in USA, Apple retail network has extended the integration of the ecosystem further. Each store set new standards for customer experience. In 2011, the digital ecosystem went one step ahead when Apple started its iCloud service and began storing all of the music, photos, movies, documents, applications, mails, calendars, and many others, and wirelessly began pushing them to all of the Apple device users. The strategy of integration, outsourcing, and collaboration thus became one under a vision of digital ecosystem for Apple products, services, and consumers. For all the participants, it was as if it was one's own world to live, but in a digital home. Apple also mastered the art of global value chain. Until Jobs came on the scene, the automobile industry and the consumer electronics industries were two industries that had a global value chain, but they were both standalone and networked. It was Jobs who created a completely unified global R&D and manufacturing network for Apple products in the consumer electronics space. You can see on the right side, top graphic, Toyota Global Network. You can also see Apple's global supply chain. And you can see that for the first time, the parts of an electronic product came from several sources all over the world. Industries were characterized by generational performance and styling differentials in the models offered for different countries, and that constrained the operation of a true global value chain. You can find that in automobiles, both by design and both by default. Default in the sense that companies didn't want to undertake development of products for several markets, so they kept out of the global network. Whereas some companies such as Toyota or Honda, they wanted to localize the products to local needs and added product complexity in the process. Typically, industries exerted to retain critical components within the developed country supply chain and start collaborating with other groups in other geographies. The two based on ownership or loyal supply history. That has been the template. Steve Jobs had an entirely different concept. He had a concept of a unified product design for the globe, with R&D being under total control of the US and the rest distributed across the globe for optimal techno-economics. We talked about in one of the earlier lectures about Apple's global supply chain system. We can refer to that as we think about this. Steve designed the devices for the globe from America, sourcing components from even potential competitors, for example Samsung, basing the final assembly in China and generating huge value for Apple and USA through global sales. Not recognizing the potential of India in manufacturing and marketing was his failing. However, Tim Cook corrected it, but we still can do a lot for Apple in India. Steve Jobs' contributions in bringing Asia on its own as the global production hub of smartphones and tablets is acknowledged by not only the leaders of the component firms but also the leaders of the government. Taiwan, China, Korea, Singapore, and Japan drove the availability of critical components for Apple devices. Despite the huge scale of procurement and critical scope, Apple followed a single vendor policy and believed in concentrated country supply chain policy, and that still paid great results for Apple. Part of the answer could be in Apple's penchant for integration under one ecosystem and the consequent assurance stakeholders received in terms of sustainable coexistence and growth. That said, Apple's supply chain strategy is perhaps one of the more guarded aspects of the even otherwise secretive company. Flawless launch of products in millions of units the world over has been made possible only through a finely coordinated and well-controlled supply chain system at Apple's. The lesson for the leaders is that global value chain can only be optimal on the basis of two primary factors: design superiority that provides the strength to source even from competitors as much as from dependent vendors. 2. An overall ecosystem that provides assurance to all stakeholders through collaborative forecasting and planning. These are the two drivers of the highly successful global value chain of Apple. Another important aspect, both from a technological and strategic perspective, is the high pedestal given to simple elegance. There is no complex elegance as far as Apple is concerned. Elegance is very palpable, but it is very simple. This foundation of simplicity with elegance continues in Apple's futuristic journey. They have supported a superstructure of a set of principles that drove every aspect of its technology and management. First, style is supreme. From the very initial days, Jobs and Apple believed in style. In neat, clean and clear fonts, in attractive, explanatory and friendly graphics, and in elegant form factor with pleasant touch and feel experience. And this has been extended to marketing with style and in dramatic detail. He also made sure that style is substance. Jobs merged the left brain, which is logical and linear, and the right brain, which is creative and emotional, in his design philosophy, operation strategy and customer connectivity. Together, this combination of style and substance became formidable. Jobs' knowledge and appreciation of calligraphy, which he learned as a dropout at Reed College, came back to support him years later to add detailed distinction and differentiation to his products. These unique competencies enabled Steve Jobs to develop the unique language in design and execute it perfectly in R&D, manufacturing, marketing, and in the overall ecosystem. He established that style is indeed the substance. There is also a feature related to timeliness in Apple's approach. He utilized timeliness as a competitive strategy. The concept of time which he executed was not one of the fastest go-to market. He didn't believe in having the least time lapse from the first ideation. Rather, it was one of providing speed and efficiency in the hands of the users. He saw time as a necessary factor to provide advantage to the user and the firm, not merely to the firm. For the user, from the response time to the navigation speeds, his devices delivered the time advantage to the users. Each at the top level, at the point of time each device was launched. Whether at Apple or the intervening Next Computer Services or Pixel Studios, he utilized every moment to develop or ideate on novel products. So every interaction was an interaction that optimized the time in terms of creating new design thoughts, new execution thoughts. And his brightest ideas were well timed for ecosystem development and support. For example, he waited to launch the devices ready in the late 1990s, only after the broadband revolution in 2000s. Steve Jobs therefore proved that timeliness doesn't mean mere first to market. It doesn't mean fast to go to market. It involved for him developing things in advance and timing them for entry along with other supportive technological developments. And that only would provide optimal benefits to the users he believed in. He also had a very enthralling capability. A key leadership trait is the ability inspiring for an organization. But few leaders extended it to the entire ecosystem as Steve Jobs did. There lied his unique enthralling capability. He always looked at the future possibilities. As he launched his devices in his meets, Steve Jobs created a rare thrill which transported his entire ecosystem of the Apple organization, component suppliers and vendors, app developers, and more importantly the users into a world of immense future possibilities. Intuitive futurism, by eschewing market research and instead relying on his own perception of futuristic consumer needs, Jobs converted launch events into much anticipated dramatic rides into future. Third, customer connect. All Apple semi-annual launch events helmed by Steve Jobs were inevitably thrilling and enthralling, representing an epitome of masterly showmanship and universal marketing. The Apple tradition of global launch of operating systems and devices is followed up with dedication by his successor Tim Cook and emulated by other competitors, though not to the same level of success and impact. However, Steve Jobs continues to be unmatched in the inspirational thrill that he alone could generate. He also made his errors, but he succeeded from his errors. It is not that either Steve Jobs or Apple was always successful. Apple struggled initially with Mac computers, while Steve erred to antagonize his board and lost the job despite several innovations between 1976 and 1985. He lost the control of Apple in May 1985. He lost money in his subsequent entrepreneurial attempt Next Computers. He had his own share of personal tribulations and unsatisfying spiritual quests. So losing the company, losing money, introspective quest, all made Steve Jobs a more fulfilled and more fulfilling leader. In terms of his style, he was at times too open, bold and confident. He had the CEO of Google on the board of Apple, and he was not concerned that Google could be a competitor in operating systems and mobiles. Nothing deterred Steve Jobs from discovering his spark of creativity to shape technology into breakthrough products and services. And all through the failures, he started creating his successes. From digitally animated movies through Pixar to device ideations through Next and Apple. Neither did he slur over the failings. He improved the processes, for example, supplier scrutiny, and products, for example, antenna grip. So he always took the errors as guideposts to corrective actions. In the fast-changing technology world, established companies are often overtaken by younger startups with more creative and disruptive technologies. Apple, however, remained resilient, entrepreneurial and startup-like. So he provided that technological push and that technological futurism. Steve Jobs demonstrated that Apple, even at 20 years of existence, and he himself at 56 years of age, could be more creative than anyone else. Apple products were not merely cool to the adolescents and the young professionals, but equally appealing to the elderly and homemakers. Jobs continued to brim with creativity in his 50s as he had been in his 20s. Despite undergoing a decade-long traumatic fight with cancer, Jobs continued to ideate and execute on his dream devices till the very end. Creativity, non-aging, undeterred could sum up Steve Jobs' passionate technological personality. Indefatigable spirit marked Steve Jobs' leadership. It is this passion for perfect innovation that drove Steve to bring in amazing new products each time. He also believed that wealth is business health. He is not known to have contributed or part transferred wealth to charity as Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have done. He, however, believed in creation of business wealth and business health together. He believed that generation of employment and elevation of quality of life are the real drivers of social progress. The current status of Apple, built on Steve Jobs' foundations, is as below. 154,000 employees all over the globe. Global revenue of $366 billion US in 2021. Global profits of $95 billion US in 2021. Having at least 200 top global vendors who understood and executed the best levels of technology. Multiple countries of operation. Market capitalization exceeding USD 3 trillion January 2022. The national wealth he generated through Apple and the sheer scale of his product development and manufacturing and the global marketing of his products created more jobs and career opportunities than any comparable industrial or charitable activity could. Steve Jobs illustrated that wealth earned innovatively through humanization of technology is the best way to ensure sustainable health of businesses. That was his philosophy. As I said, all the products which Apple offered was one ecosystem. Each generation of iPod, iPhone and iPad had surge buying in the quarter of introduction, followed by steady demand. This annual cycle was a response to generational innovations. You could see the kind of pie that different products and services of Apple have taken. This innovation spree also saw the phasing out of iPod once iPhone became the mainstream device. It was an era started with the success of back, decline and structuring, return to profitability, and a full line of smart devices. Apple's growth since rehiring of Steve Jobs 20 years ago, that is 1997 to 2017, has been one great journey of growth. In 1984-92, that was the computer. In 91-97, a completely different type of computer, but it wasn't really working that well. But from 1997 onwards, a completely new range of products started coming out of Apple and began dominating the market. He was known to brim with impatience to develop perfect and innovative products, even if they were just few. He didn't believe in segmenting the market with multiple products. In his managerial interactions, he had his differences with John Sculley in 1985. But without him, Apple went down further. So he made an epochal return in 1997 to lead Apple to great heights with innovation. The charts above and the phases of startup, decline, turnaround and growth, wherein the company lost out without Steve Jobs and grew with Steve Jobs, reflects the innovation leadership that Steve Jobs provided. It also teaches us that a leader who understands science and technology, who understands and integrates science and technology, and he is driven by passion and makes the entire organization inspired, can create a wonderful technological and social system. It is for these reasons that he became a global leadership icon. Apple has seen dramatic growth in revenues, profits and market capitalization from 1997, the year of his re-entry. The growth achieved by Apple in a product-based industry contrasted sharply with the decline of America in product innovation during the same period. This illustrates the importance of leadership. America in the 1900s and 2000s seemed to have lost its creative and innovative capabilities, once epitomized by General Electric and other companies of that nature. But Steve Jobs, during the phase of that decline of traditional American manufacturing, demonstrated that with an amazing model of technology and strategy and leadership, a new wave of business growth can be achieved. And those breakthrough products which he brought in epitomized what should be the endeavor of all leaders who want to drive business growth. By focusing on simplicity, elegance, perfection and friendliness in his products and in his ecosystem components, he created a total ecosystem of products and services that had sustainability and economic development. Apple products touched and shaped as never before human life and social connectivity. Now Apple is engaged in trying to recover as much of metals and materials as possible from the various devices it makes, and the goal is to make the maximum possible recycling happen through the Apple products. Steve's life, which provided the much needed life and soul to technology, would inspire corporate leaders as well as bright men and women. I have therefore spent a lot of time in delineating the leadership characteristics of Steve Jobs alongside talking about the core foci areas of strategy and technology. His leadership inspires others to focus on the hard but highly rewarding aspect of driving sustainable growth through innovation, elegance and perfection in design, manufacturing and marketing in an overall strategic framework. So there is a magic in Steve Jobs, and there is also a message. Unlike Jack Welch and other leaders, Steve Jobs never made an attempt to discuss or describe his managerial or leadership thoughts in conferences or other public forums. The only exception probably was the famous "Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish" commencement address he delivered at the Stanford University. His message was intensely personal. Steve Jobs' commencement address at Stanford University in 2005 went on to become one of the most quoted speeches. He was sharply introspective. His address is still described as life-changing and career-transforming. The 3 personal stories he narrated in the speech were unique, and his life as well as his speech were inspirational. His life, without doubt, would inspire generations for the power of the simplicity, just as his Apple products would continue to thrill generations with the elegance, innovation and perfection of technology. We have discussed in this lecture, particularly in the part related to Apple, through several examples, the legend that Steve Jobs is one that would live on through generations of human enterprise and endeavor. And the elegant model of perfect innovation he built is the model which any technologies or any strategies, in fact, every technologist and every strategist should follow. And these two have to occur in the umbrella of leadership that is very unique, that is passionate, and that brings the best of strategy and technology in every individual as well as in every company. That should be the goal of people who want to be leaders and leaders who are already working as leaders in various companies. The financials of Apple, as I said, it crossed $366 billion and has a $95 billion earnings. Market cap has crossed $3 trillion. If finances are the criteria, these are also there. Thank you very much for your attention. We'll meet in the last session which will follow. Thank you very much.